This is the most peaceful way we can think of
Since the 2012 legislature began,
to both protest the fact that year after year we are denied a public hearing
Add the Words Idaho has placed sticky notes
and to make sure that those across the state can have their voices heard inside the Capitol.
on the chamber doors of the House and Senate.
Our sticky notes are simply words, not a permanent fixture, just our calm way of respectfully and quietly bringing the voices of and stories of thousands of Idahoans here.
Each note says something different, but each one carries the same message.
No Idahoan should have to live in fear of being fired just for being gay or being denied housing or educational opportunities just based on the fact that they're gay.
That was KTVB's Scott Evans reporting on the Add the Words campaign from 10 years ago. She was speaking with Ashley Thompson and Misty Tolman back on January 16th, 2012. Almost 10 years ago to the day. And to this day, it remains legal in Idaho for a business to refuse to serve or a landlord refuse to rent to a person who is LGBTQ. Sure, there are pockets around the state, like in Ada County, a dozen other cities, where that kind of discrimination is outlawed. But for the past 16 legislative sessions, there has been a push by a group of Idahoans to make it statewide, to add 4 words to Idaho's Human Rights Act. 4 words: sexual orientation and gender identity. As in Idaho Code 675901, to secure for all individuals within the state freedom from discrimination because of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin or disability in connection with employment, public accommodations, and real estate property transactions, which is how they want that bill to look like, or that law to look like. But for the 16th time, that legislation likely won't see the light of day. Representative John McCrosty did introduce a personal bill yesterday in the House, but personal bills typically don't get any sort of public hearing. Fitting, the bill was co-sponsored by 16 other legislators from both the House and the Senate. Now, this was a campaign that began back in 2006 when a coalition was formed to get legislation passed to add those 4 words to the already existing law. But for years, according to the Add the Words people, Republicans blocked every attempt to even allow a public hearing on it. In 2010, the Idaho Safe Schools and Fair Employment Working Group did manage to get a bill formally printed and introduced. It was Senate Bill 1033, but it failed on a party line vote in committee. The next year, the Add the Words campaign had a name, and they started putting those sticky notes on the doors like you just saw, and that continued into 2012. Still no public hearing. Then in 2014, Add the Words Idaho decided they're going to get serious, and they started silent, peaceful protests inside the Capitol building, wearing those black T-shirts you also saw saying Add the Words. And it was a session of citations and arrests, the first one happening on February 3rd, 2014, outside Senate chambers. The 120 arrests were enough to get some attention because not that session, but the following session, 2015, on January 16th, a hearing took place in the House State Affairs Committee that lasted several days. Hundreds testified before the committee from all over the state, and this was before Zoom. However, once again, it failed to get out of that committee by a party line vote of 13-4, Republicans representing the 13 nay votes there. And that was the last time there was a public hearing to consider adding sexual orientation and gender identity to Idaho's Human Rights Act. But every year since, someone has tried, and this year was no different, with Representative John McCrosty putting forth that personal bill with little chance of it going anywhere. He knows that, but the idea is to keep it on people's radar, he told us today. We wanted to know, after 16 years and 7 years since the last public hearing on it, what's it going to take for Idaho to add the words?
You know, it's going to take a number of things. Some of it is going to take more conversations. This is the bill that we had the hearing on 7 years ago during my first session in the legislature. Maybe this isn't the right bill, but we need to at least talk about what is it about this bill that that gives people angst. If it's the overall concept, then obviously that becomes a non-starter. But
I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around this idea that it's not the right bill. It's literally adding 4 words to an already existing law. What more could be? I mean, it seems so simple.
It should be really simple. If we don't have the conversation, then no, it's not going to do anything.
If you think they were to come up with a bill this session that would add the 2 words vaccination status to the Idaho Human Rights Bill, what are the chances that would pass?
That's an interesting question, and I think that was actually posed in the last session. Yeah, that's a great question.
Maybe it will be answered later on this legislative session.
That's entirely a possibility, and if we can have that conversation, then I hope we can have this conversation as well.
If one, why not the other, right? McCrosty said there are models out there Idaho could use, like in Utah, which passed the same thing back in 2015, should lawmakers entertain the idea of considering a bill like this. The point of bringing it forth for the 16th time is to hopefully open up that conversation, McCrosty says. By the way, Representative McCrosty isn't at the State House this week. He's a teacher by trade, 5th and 6th grade music in the Boise School District. And he would usually have a full-time substitute during the legislative session so he can focus on, legislating. But because of a shortage of substitutes, he's having to teach this week. And it will likely happen again next month. Staff shortages having an impact everywhere, obviously.